Hello. So, it turns out that the reason why I had to move off the boat for several months has gone away. Hooray! Which means I get to stay on my boat, and it also means I booked a couple of weeks off work to sort it all out, which means I've got a week with nothing to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go for a trip down the canal, down south this time. You can see behind me, I am at Milton Keynes Marina, which is slightly further south than where I started on the last video. I haven't filmed the first, therefore, couple of 3 hours because, if you really want to see it, you can just play the last video backwards. But it's time for us now to start down out of Milton Keynes. So we've got about another hour or so out of Milton Keynes. And we're going to go to the town of Fenny Stratford and probably end up just in quite rural countryside for a bit, and then we're going to proceed down south through Leighton Buzzard, maybe Marsworth. We will see. Let's play it by ear. So hurrah! Let's crack on. Here is Milton Keynes Marina proper, the proper entrance by water, and we are now going to crack on down south, and I think I will put up a map of where I'm planning to get to today around about now. So, this is the little village of Simpson, and whilst it is itself a reasonably unremarkable village, it represents the official southern reaches of Milton Keynes. The plough, in fact, there represents the southern reaches of Milton Keynes. Beyond here lie the twin towns of Fenny Stratford and Bletchley. Fenny Stratford is very small, Bletchley slightly less so. And whilst to basically all intents and purposes they are more or less part of Milton Keynes, it's certainly very difficult to spot a place where MK ends and Fenny begins. Nonetheless, technically speaking, we are now leaving Milton Keynes. There's a fair old bit of suburbia to get through before we get into the countryside, but nonetheless, it remains very beautiful. So we're going to go down towards Fenny Stratford Lock and begin our long, slow climb up to the Tring summit. And here comes a boat, so I'd probably better go. So I appreciate we aren't technically in Milton Keynes, but nothing says Milton Keynes more than this scene. A beautiful, rural, old house, admittedly with a new extension, a beautiful 18th century bridge, and then just beyond it, as we come through, an enormous concrete monstrosity of a dual carriageway. This is Milton Keynes all over. As we get out of Milton Keynes, in fact, the canal will stay more or less as it always has been, which is admirably rural. The only real difference will be that these enormous great big bridges will kind of slow down and stop happening quite so much. Now, that sounds like a complaint, but actually, to be fair, what they've done with the canal in Milton Keynes is they've kept it incredibly rural looking whilst they built a big thriving city all round it. I mean, frankly, there are several cities, London, which could do with taking care of its canals as well as Milton Keynes does. So some of you might be wondering what effect the canal water crisis this summer has been having on Milton Keynes. The answer is not a great deal. And the reason is because this pound, the Milton Keynes pound, is the lowest and longest pound until you get well beyond Berkhamsted to the south. And it's fed by the River Tove, which flows in at the bottom of Stoke Bruin locks and then through Cosgrove lock. So if this ever ran out of water, the canal system would be troubled indeed. However, just about here is where this pound ends. The canal needs to climb up and over the Chilterns in order to get as far as Hertfordshire, and then it begins its long, gentle descent towards Thames. Not that we're going to get that far. The first lock that we come across is Fenny Lock, which is coming up in a minute. It has to be said that doesn't add a great deal to the climb, having as it has less than a foot rise, so it's a teeny tiny little lock, but it does have a swing bridge in the middle of it. So obviously I won't be able to video that, but my front camera may capture some of that. We will see. I'll see you on the other side. Well now, that's the climb, albeit in the tiniest possible way, started. We're now heading out of Fenny Stratford, past this rather unfortunate sunken boat. That's been there all the time I've been here. It's never moved, and every year it's got more and more distressed, and it's finally gone under. I think, to be honest, it's been abandoned. It's another boat that's going to have to be pulled out at the CRT's expense and disposed of at the CRT's expense, which is very sad. However, although we are past Fenny Stratford Lock, we are not, in fact, completely out of the aegis of Milton Keynes. We've got a little bit to go yet, so let's crack on towards the last village we get to before we get to proper countryside, and that is the village of Water Eaton. Well, this is the charming little village of Water Eaton. This bridge is where I filmed my very first Canal video from. Now, to the Canal user, Water Eaton is an absolutely charming little village, and indeed it is. Sort of goes back to 18th century or so with a couple of modern houses, but basically a very lovely little village. But to the residents of Milton Keynes, Water Eaton is something else entirely. Because off to our right, not very far away, less than half a mile away, is the Water Eaton estate, which has, shall we say, a reputation. Now, it must be said, I'm sure most of the people in Water Eaton are lovely human beings, but there are a significant minority who are nutters. And one of the things you're advised not to do in Milton Keynes is walk around the Water Eaton estate late at night. It's not even in Milton Keynes, it's sort of outside Milton Keynes. They've put their dodgiest housing where they can't get into the town centre. So this is the sort of curious double life of Water Eaton. Nonetheless, this is the last little village on the way thoroughly out of anything to do with Milton Keynes. And one of the aspects of Milton Keynes are these very, very tall trees they plant everywhere. And this is the last stanza of trees. And as soon as we go past Willowbridge Marina, we are then in the middle of what you might charitably call bugger all nowhere. So let's get on towards there. So, ladies and gentlemen, you have just been witness to the world's slowest overtake. Normally that will be considered quite a rude thing to do, but in fact, just to be really clear, so no one thinks those lovely people were rude, I invited them to come past because they obviously want to cruise faster than me. It's a really wide stretch of canal, and there's no other boats around. This is us approaching Willowbridge Marina, just the other side of that bridge there in the distance, and once we get past there, we will be fully out of the whole Milton Keynes area. And as I said in my last comment, you'll be able to tell because this stanza of trees will end. It's about 2 miles long, this particular one, but it comes to an end, and then that's us out of the clutches of MK. Coming up on our left-hand side, as you can see more or less in the centre of the picture at the minute, is a funny little dark blue and light blue boat with a pontoon end. And that boat is called a wilderness water rat. They're very, very rare nowadays, and they swap hands for quite a lot of money. They were built in the 60s, 70s and early 80s as a sort of trailerable canal boat. They were very, very popular amongst people that wanted to go and explore canals that were disconnected from the rest of the system. In fact, I used to have one. Not exactly that model. My first boat was a wilderness beaver, which had a sort of pointier end and a slightly larger cruiser deck, but otherwise had the same cabin and broadly the same sort of hull. In any case, they are vanishingly rare nowadays, water rats, except on things like the modern Brett Canal, and it's lovely to see one still being used. As I said, we are shortly to come across Willowbridge Marina. What happens is we go under this bridge, lovely old bridge, then we go underneath the more modern dual carriageway bridge just beyond it, which happens a lot in the Milton Keynes area, and then once we are under that, that is us out of any form of suburbia into rural, I think probably Buckinghamshire, possibly Bedfordshire at this point. It swaps into Bedfordshire, I think, when we go through when we go through Leighton Buzzard. But in any case, here we are. We are leaving MK and off to the wide blue yonder. Hurrah! So this on the right is Willowbridge Marina. It's not actually a marina, it's Willowbridge Marine, I think, actually. It's a whole bunch of hard standing. And if you go back to my very first, or the video marked video number 1, rather than the channel introduction, but video 0, video 1, has got as its cover photo that crane holding my boat, because I had it blacked here last year, almost exactly a year ago, in fact. So that is where that happened. Willowbridge Marina is owned by, how shall I put this, a character. Actually all the people I talked to were lovely, and all the people who worked for the boat were lovely. But the owner is something of a, well, nutter, in fact. Nevertheless, there it is. Perfectly nice people, perfectly nice services. Hurrah. Now, let's go into the countryside. So this is us sneaking up on Stoke Hammond Lock. I'll tell you more about Stoke Hammond in tomorrow's video, you lucky, lucky humans. But what I think I will do is I will go through Stoke Hammond Lock and then call it a day for this evening. It's not actually evening, I don't think it's even 4 o'clock yet, but it's getting a bit blowy and a bit windy, and the sun is pretty much constantly in my eyes. So that's what I think I will do. We will go through Stoke Hammond Lock, we will find somewhere sensible to moor up, and we will stay the night in the middle of nowhere. Hurrah! And that's me at the end of day 1. I've started the climb out towards the Chilterns, albeit not by a huge amount. So tomorrow I think we have 6 locks to go through, and also the exciting town of Leighton Buzzard. So join me for that. If you like these videos, please do like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.